here we go again. So this is the transit key. This is the one that doesn't come apart, or does it? We get our spanners in there and use them as a lever and prise them together, and you can crack through this glue. Now it is basically glued together and it does separate. You can use some circuit pliers to do the same job, but if you haven't got any, then 2 spanners prised together will just force it apart. Once you get it so far, you can just squeeze it, get the screwdriver in there if you're really struggling. Now the key will ping out, the key blade will ping out of this when we get it far enough apart, because it's got a little spring there attaching it together. But we're going to put all that back together again in a minute. It's not a problem. Get the screwdriver in there and just prise it apart. It's tight, but it does come apart. You've got to be a bit persistent with it, and eventually it will just separate. Like I say, it's just bonded together with a bit of glue. There's the spring and stuff. Bingo, we're open. Now you can see the battery and the circuit board. So we're just going to pop that circuit board out with a screwdriver, being a bit careful with it, just gently get it out. And you can see the problem pretty much straight away, and that is the battery has separated from the circuit board. The little leg on the contact has snapped. Here it is flapping about, it's just flapping away. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a repair on this by adding a piece of wire across the two. You can see there how that's what happens, it just separates from the board. So I'm going to cut a little groove in the side of the circuit board with my little hacksaw there, just so that I can feed a new piece of wire around the side of the board. It just gives me a little bit of room to put it back in the casing. So I'm soldering this little twisted piece of wire. All I've done is just took some strands out of a piece of normal wire, cut it, twisted it together, and there you go. Look, I've soldered it onto the existing leg, and I'm just going to bend it round and then solder it onto the bottom of that battery casing where it meets the board. And I just solder that in there, being careful not to burn your fingers because it does get a little bit hot. And I've soldered that to the bottom of that battery casing now, and it's a really strong repair, so we're not going to have any problems with it separating again. That's really got hold of that. That looks really tidy, really good, and that's sat right into that little groove I cut with a hacksaw. So it just protrudes a tiny bit, so I'm just going to get my soldering iron again and just melt a little slot in the casing, just a tiny little, about 1 millimetre, just melt a little bit into there, because you can see it's just too tight for it to go back in again. So let's grab that soldering iron and just take a little bit out of that casing there, just a tiny melt. There we go, that's enough. And now that casing will fit the circuit board, or the circuit board will fit the casing, whichever way around you want it to go. If I can figure out how to get it back in. Look, let's put the fat bit in first. Come on, yeah, somewhere there. Come on, sort it. There we go. Look, let's slide that back in again now. Just push that back in and it will click down to the base. Push it in nice and firm, and you know it's going to work because as soon as I press this into there, the vehicle opened. So we knew the remote was working, because I say the van unlocked straight away. Now then, this key, you put the spring into that little noggin there, and it's got a little groove in the bottom, so that spring fits into the groove. Then I'll call it a noggin. Then we put the little noggin back into the key blade with the spring pointing upwards. Now then, when we put the casing back on, we've got to put some glue around this casing. Got a bit of super glue here. I'm just going to stick a bit of that around there. And when we put this casing back in, we have to twist it and rotate it onto the spring as you're pushing down, and that gives the blade the little whiz when you press the button and it pings up. So here we go. A little bit tricky this bit, but just you'll soon see it what I do when I put it back on. Being careful not to super glue your hands to the key, which you can hear me sticking myself to the key a bit. Look at him shaking, look. Oh blimey, it's the excitement of it all. Right, here we go. So it's almost like, oh yeah, look, just press, twist it round 3/4 of a turn, and then just push it together, and it fits perfectly, absolutely perfectly. Give that a squeeze for a couple of minutes just so that glue goes off. The blade works, it's got the spring there, and there we go. Look, press that button, bingo. it.